Hello, quilt people. How you doing? I'm doing super well, and I'm very excited about this tutorial because often people will contact me and say, "Okay, here's my quilt. How should I quilt it?" And I'm like, "Oh, really depends on your personal style." So today we're kind of gonna dig into, what shapes are you quilting, and what are kind of my favorite options for doing that. Everything, from free motion to specialty stitches on your regular machine. So that's what we're gonna get to today. And I'm kind of changing the format of how I'm doing this because I know some people don't always love the whole theatrical bit at the beginning. So I'm actually going to post where the actual tutorial starts in case you want to fast forward and miss all the madness. Because as we know, hello, I do read all of the comments that are left, and I take that in personally, and so I try and facilitate everything so that I won't once again get quoted as the drunk uncle of crafts. I see you, Sacramento. So, in order to avoid that moniker, I am going to, post the time in which the actual tutorial starts. So, super exciting. Quilting cowboy trucker hats. They're now available for sale on my website, and I highly recommend them because they're literally better than any antidepressants that you could ever take. Why is that? Because how can you be angry or upset when you're literally wearing a quilting cowboy trucker hat? They come in, of course, army green. Yay, right? Super cute. And then, of course, they always come in my favorite, Christmas brown. Right? We've kind of covered that joke before. But anyhow, so those are your options, and I highly recommend if you want one, they will, honestly, really pick up your day. Because there's so many things you can do in a quilting cowboy trucker hat, such as have so many hats, and so if you do want one, go over to quiltingcowboy.com and then hit on the shop tab. That's where all of my patterns and swag and stuff is for sale, and so you can pick them up. I have a lot more brown than green, but let me know. I will do my best to accommodate. So that is there now on my website. Let's get to the tutorial. I know there are a lot of resources out there to help you kind of identify what quilting should go in what shape, right? Or at least kind of a guide towards that. My go-to resource for sure is this book, Shape by Shape Quilting, Free Motion with Angela Walters. I love this book. It really helped me as a jumping off point to kind of open my eyes to, what's possible in certain shapes. So I'm not going to go into all of this here, as that would probably not be too kind to the author, as she probably wants you to buy the book and not give away all the secrets online. But I am going to go through some of my personal favorites for certain shapes to kind of give you some ideas, because you really should, first of all, look at the shape that you're quilting, okay? And then kind of determine what's an appropriate thing within that shape, and then also to determine what rulers you're going to use. I'm a big fan of rulers. As if you went to back to my free motion quilting on my mid arm, that tutorial also kind of shows you how to use rulers. So if you're not sure how to do that, go back and visit that tutorial. But today we're just going to be talking about what to quilt in what shapes, okay? So for basic shapes, let's start with just a square, okay? So one of my favorite kind of techniques is to do like a half circle, right? So you do a half circle there, and then another half circle here, across the top, and then back down. Okay, so that makes a really nice shape, and then I'll often come back into the center, do like a square or a circle right here, and then come back here, and then back around and do that kind of shape. I think that that's really fun. Another way that's a little more simple for just a square would be to do kind of a leaf here, like that, right? And then another one, and then another one. So you get that kind of shape. Or if you want to just do a kind of cross hatch, right, that's kind of fun, you can just do a wavy one, right, that comes through all the squares like that, okay? Moving on to triangles. All right. The first one I really kind of dig is to do the same leaf from the bottom to the point and then back down, and then to the side and back down, and then finally here. So you end up with 3 on one side, and then come back and do that on that side. So you end up with this kind of floral, right? Kind of floral deal. I'm not taking a lot of time to draw this out, but it'll give you an idea. The next one I like is to just come up to here, right? And then like that. Right? So with the triangle, let me show you again. Just come into the center, back down to here, and then up the side, and then down through like that. And then I'll often start to do like back and forth like that, because I really like, just lines kind of accentuating that, right? And then come through here, down, and like that. I think that would be cool. And then finally, for the triangle, just one more idea, is to just kind of accentuate, go up and down, up and down, up and down, right? One more time. So up and down, up and down, up and down. So you're just accentuating that. All right, then circles. Let's look at circles. I always like this kind of leaf shape, right? So start from here and do a leaf like that. Same, repeating here. Same here. I think that that's a fun one. And then another one is just playing on the circle, circle small, circle medium, and circle large. Okay, that's a cool one. And then lastly is to just take it all the way straight across, and then come down, and then go back across, and then come down, and then go back across, and then go up and down. All right, so this Stetson Cross behind me, you can see how I did just basic cross hatching in the open spaces, right? Oh, let me show you down here, right? Basic cross hatching in these open spaces. And then even though this is the same color, to make it feel different, this middle cross or internal sashing, I just did a basic stipple. Right, so just kind of, random movement, because I really wanted that to stand out from this. And then on these kind of almost, bare paw items, I did very simple but elongated stitching. Ooh, elongated stitching. That is one of my new favorites. Why? Because it lends itself to a more handmade look. You see how big these stitches are, right? And again, that makes it look more like I did it by hand. I didn't do it by hand. And then just, some basic, like I did cross hatching up to about this point, right? From here to here is cross hatching. And then from this point all the way back is lines, right? So don't be afraid to like change those up as you're doing it. And then on this part here, I just got my ruler and did boop, boop, and then up here, and then back up, and then back up to there, right? And I love those rulers. And so let's look at a few more examples of quilting that I've done that I really like. And then we'll look at rulers, and then we're gonna look at a couple different ways to actually practice it, right? Because it takes practice, right? Like I always say, you gotta love it enough in order to survive your own learning curve, right? Okay. Okay, let's look at this Rhinestone Star. This is one of my favorite original patterns that I've ever done. Now, do not buy this one off of my website if you're a beginner, okay? This one really you need to be at least intermediate, if not advanced, to do this one because there's a lot going on between the polygons and the triangle, all right? So, but what I love about this one is while this kind of is almost stitch in the ditch, right, in this basic triangle here, I don't love stitch in the ditch as a general rule. It doesn't kind of give life to your quilt, and it has a lot of just open space that's not quilted that I feel like should be. The general rule for quilting is you don't ever want anything more open than the size of your fist, okay? That is too much of an open space not to be quilted. Okay, so then moving on to the polygons, like I was just showing you, and the cap is on, don't worry. I'll be drawing up a Sharpie on my quilt. Oh my God. Okay, so like here, this is where I did like half the triangle, right? And then this part is open, right? Same repeated here, right? Just basic lines accentuating half of that, and then this part is open, okay? So that is one option that I really like. Let me show you the next quilt. All right, so for this one, and I apologize that I haven't made the pattern for this one yet. It's just basic stars with kind of a pinwheel in the star. And I said I'd make the pattern for it. I just haven't gotten around to it. I apologize. I know some people have been kept asking about it, and I will do it. It's just I've had so little time. I've had crazy design deadlines, and that always comes first because that pays the bills. What am I doing? Oh yeah, this. So, if you are thinking about doing stitch in the ditch, I would encourage you, rather than doing that, do this version because it's the same motion, only you're doing it slightly inside, right? Slightly inside the triangle rather than in the ditch of the triangle, which doesn't make it pop the same way or give that kind of handmade feel of not stitching in the ditch, right? Because this really, it's a lot cuter when you can see the stitching or the quilting that you're doing on it, okay? So that's that one. Let's look at the next one. All right, I've shared some successes. Let me share a failure. This one is, well, it was challenging, okay? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create this kind of, what the hell you call that, a Pantone? When you like do like the whole run. Anyways, so I created this koi Pantone that I was gonna, quilt stripes of this way. Well, you can see the end result is I did one stripe and then I was like, this is insane. So I abandoned that and opted for wavy lines. Yay, good for me. But the point of me showing you this is you can achieve something like this by essentially just drawing it on paper, right? And then quilting or sewing through and then removing the paper. Just use super thin paper. There's a special paper actually you can get for this. But this can be achieved, and it's great. It's just super time consuming. And if you're into that, then great. I totally ran out of patience with it. Anyhow, so that's another version as well that you can do if you want to do more of an image as opposed to just free motion like I did out here. Okay? Pantone, really? It's not called Pantone. Pantograph, hello? I don't know what's with my English today, but here we are. Okay, this is another version of a pantograph that I did with just regular paper. And I actually love this effect of this kind of almost artichoke, right, flavor, and then it goes over and then kind of does these various leaves coming up to a point here. Anyways, this one was far simpler than the koi fish, which was just ridiculously insane. So this is another version of that same idea that I feel like is far more successful, okay? Then on this part here, I wanted to do it like a Argyle sweater, so I really changed up the color, right, and did it here in the center of all of these diamonds. All right, so this quilt that I did uses a lot of different quilting techniques that I really love. I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually a maple leaf pattern sewn in over the buffalo plaid here, and I think that really looks great. It covers enough space, yet is not overwhelming for this area that already has a lot of print to it. Now, if you can see here, I also love this technique in terms of creating an additional texture or shape within this area here. So what I did in order to create these puffy circles, right, elongated circles or kind of ovals, is that, where's my pen? Hold on one second. All right, so in this area, it was just a series of back and forth, getting longer to this point and then skinnier, right? And then getting longer to this point and then getting skinnier and getting longer and skinnier, right? So then you get these unquilted parts, which kind of are the negative space that create these other shapes. I love that a lot. I did the same thing in the body of the quilt in order to kind of echo what was going on with the buffalo plaid in the main body. Okay, so here I created this exact same idea as far as creating negative space with your quilting. So I did back and forth and back and forth and back and forth here, and then leave this one open, back and forth and back and forth. So you really are, tamping down with the quilting one block and then leaving the next one open in order to create almost a new texture, right? That again echoes what's going on with the buffalo plaid, but it kind of just, complements it well without getting, too crazy. And it's very simple quilting, very effective. I love that a lot. All right, so then in the green cross here, you can see I just did some basic pebbling, which is kind of the same idea as this here, right? These are almost big pebbles, whereas these ones here are tiny, 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 where you don't sew down circles and you sew all the negative space that's going on here, and then just some basic stippling here in the duck. Okay, then moving down the quilt, all right, we have here some basic cross hatching just in the shield, which I think is really effective. For the guns, I did just on the edge, right? They're too thin to try and actually, do more than that. So I just wanted to pop those up with some around the edge, or kind of almost in the ditch, I guess you could say, with the guns. And then the bears, I created the same kind of, I wanted to play up on their kind of bear-like quality by just doing these zigzags, right? Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on those in order to create that kind of rawr, effect of the grizzly bear. Okay, and then, so that's pretty much it for the quilting on this one, but I love, love, love this quilt. It is definitely one of my favorites. Okay, let's move on. All right, for this here, on this border, I just did basic scalloping, right? Just these circles like that. And that's pretty easy to achieve with the right ruler. Okay, so that's what the border is there. And then 9 patches. Ooh, good to talk about. Okay, you can probably hopefully see it in this one. You can see that I did just basically, circle, 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 right? So on all the edges, I did kind of this circle, right? I forget what you call this. A Buddha's something or whatever. Anyways, so I love this pattern because once you're done doing that on all of the exterior squares of your 9 patch, it actually creates this really lovely circle that's right here that features and pops up the center of that circle. And then from there, I was able to kind of pop up the borders of this light blue and of right here of the snowflake in order to make that pop as well. And then in the open space such as this, right, I just did really small stippling around the tree. And again, I'm pushing the boundary here of what should be left unquilted, but I'm very happy with the end result with just the basic stippling all the way around and not quilting in the center of the tree. All right. Then for my Blue Palms quilt, this is the one that was in the Ontario Museum of Art and History. I did just kind of a basic paisley, right? Free-form paisley in the open body part. And then in order to accentuate the leaves, I kind of wanted to accentuate the veining, right? How you would have on a leaf a line that goes down the center. And so what I did in order to create that is I just started, like, let's say here, and I went out to the center, up the border and then back with a little bit of an arc and then back out and then back in with a little arc and back out, back in with an arc, right? So I just kind of kept doing this, always making sure that when I hit the center of the leaf, right, that I kind of came down and closed off where I was before starting out again, which over time generates that center vein that you can see here in the leaf, which I think is what makes it so effective. All right, just two more examples and then we're gonna get to rulers. Now, for circles, I really liked creating, I like to echo what's going on with the piecing in the quilting. So where there's not a circle, I'll actually make a circle. And then within the circle, I'll do, kind of various arching that has the element of a circle without being too, literal. And then on the outside circle here, I just put these kind of radiating, almost like a old-fashioned poster outside in order to kind of give it a burst, right? Going this way of movement. Okay, so there's that. And then finally, my favorite approach to quilting that I use a lot because I think it's effective. It has its roots in traditional quilting, right? Is just this kind of basic small cross hatch. All right, so you can look at doing that in any big open space like that. And then in this area here, I kind of repeated it, but on an angle, right? So that it has more diamonds as opposed to squares. And then in the black area, I just did lines again to try and give it movement so that it really looks like it's heading up this way and then it has movement in the quilt, and then a denser version down here. So that is it as far as kind of some of my favorite quilting stitches. Let's get to rulers. Okay, so for rulers, I really suggest for the beginner that you get at least a set of these, which are just, all circles or half circles, right? And all different sizes. And then also just a straight edge. Then over time, you can kind of incorporate things like, clamshells and these holly. I have another clamshell here that I literally couldn't live without, right? Because it has this action, which allows you to, when you're quilting, take it and, with your needle go bop, 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 right? Like that, and it's super simple. And then of course on the other side, it's the same thing, but tiny, right? And you just go like that, super easy. Okay, so there's that. And then, when you're working with a ruler, I use the 45 line that cuts through the middle on a diagonal a lot. So it's hard to see, and that's why I sometimes see where I use tape, right, on this and on this. So I'll actually identify, like let's say on this one, you can see that the tape goes to, essentially to that point there, right? You can see where that tape is. But that's gonna be the line on my fabric each and every time that I'm gonna line it up with in order to make that circle, right? This top of the tape is the line of fabric, and then I just move it over, right? Top of the tape, line of the fabric, line up, and then you do something like that, okay? So there's that, but again, using the 45, let me get a next piece of paper, 1 second. When you have, right, so let's say your pieced work goes like this, right? By taking that 45 line, you can very simply and quickly draw diagonal lines just by lining up this 45 line with your piecing, right? And that's how I get a lot of those diagonal lines that I make in the actual quilting. Okay, so that's good. If you get a big ruler like this, just make sure that it has a 45 on it. And for these guides, they're a thicker plastic, right? A regular ruler is quite thin, whereas these are at least a 1/4 inch thick. All right, so that's it as far as rulers. I would suggest that you practice with them, right? So don't just think, oh, I'm going to start sewing, this is going to be awesome. All right, you really have to practice first of all with drawing it and whatever it is you're going to do to get the feel of, right, that full motion. Because you can't stop, right? It's not like you can draw a half circle and go buff, 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 buff. I mean, you can't start at a different point each time. You have to, keep, it moving non-stop, right? So that's one way to practice. And then let's talk about other ways to practice. I can't stress enough like even with a basic stipple, how that feel, because if you can draw it, you can probably do it, but that's not my complete practice, right? So just whatever it is, right, just keep going and get used to, you know, filling in that negative space in a bunch of different ways, right? The main thing with a stipple is you want to keep, see how I started getting it bigger? That looks bad, okay? So you're going to want to keep it the same dimensions, right? This is a bigger one over here, smaller over here, as far as keeping the stipple regulated in terms of size, right? And then other practice is just going to be, like we talked about before, maintaining that perfect, right, non-stop action of what it is that you're doing, because you got to figure that out before you start sewing it. Okay, so figure that out on paper first, and then I'll show you the crazy tip that I sometimes use in order to get it on the mid-arm. Often people will get like a mid-arm or something like that, and they'll be like, why is this so difficult? Let me show you why, because what you're trying to do is probably something that you've never tried to do before. It is a very odd thing to try and sew under a stationary needle with two hands, right? And while you're dragging the quilt around, right? So essentially what you're trying to do, and this is why it makes it so difficult, is let's say that you hold one pen down, like it's a stationary needle. And then what you're trying to do is draw with it, right? And you can see how, like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm back in elementary school, right? Like that is very, very, very difficult to hold the pen in one place and then expect to draw in an awesome manner, right? That's where it takes practice in order to do this. And so I would, if you have a specific thing that you've never tried before, try it in that way where you're just, okay, let's say we're gonna take a box and we want to, okay, stationary needle, we want to practice going like this, and then like this, and then back here, and then out to here, right? And then back here. That's gonna feel more like the actual quilting than it would just drawing it like I did, here with, because just drawing it, I mean, that's super simple. We're all used to holding a pen in that manner. What we're not used to doing is holding something like this and moving it around in order to draw. It's like drawing with your feet. You see those amazing artists who can't use their arms or whatever, and they like are drawing or painting with their feet. You're like, how? I don't know. So anyways, that is my ultimate tip for when you want to, practice. Do it like this so that it more closely comes to what you're going to be doing, and you'll see how bad I am, right? I'm actually better with fabric than I am with this, but that kind of gives you more of the feeling of what it's going to feel like than anything else. All right, so I hope that that was helpful. As always, I appreciate your support. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you could just hit that subscribe button, that would really help me out. And yeah, look for the new Quilting Cowboy trucker hats. They are now available on my website, quiltingcowboy.com, and you can always reach me at quiltingcowboy@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in.